Hi guys, this is Miss Dolly, and in case you haven't read this, this is how to answer a short answer question. I know we've tried this before with YouTube, and it's blocked some of you guys on the school, so hopefully using the school too, you'll be able to get this to work for you. I'm going to go ahead and really quickly, I'm going to run through for you guys how to use the box to help you answer your short answer questions. Now before we get started, let me go ahead and just explain a little bit about the short answer question process. So that way, if you have a parent listening with you, or if you want to show this to them, they can also know exactly what the state graders are looking for, and what I'm looking for when I grade your things. Now, short answer questions are designed to help you ease your way into college. They have a couple of things that they'll ask you to do that are college level skills. They'll ask you to use quotes, and they'll like to see embedded quotes too, which we'll talk about. They'll ask you to analyze, and they'll ask you generally a question that requires you to answer almost two questions at once, as I'll show you guys. Now, one of the things that we've noticed as a grade level for English 2 at West is that you guys tend to rely on processes that you've already learned, techniques you've already learned, and you're using this again and again, things that you've learned kind of in middle school, like APE, to answer these short answer questions, and they just aren't considered high enough level for the graders when you get to high school. They want to see something that's going to be almost college level. So watch that. The technique that I'm going to show you guys today, which we call the box, is something that will help you get to college level. It's going to require a step up from, for example, APE, which you guys might have used, or ACE, which you might have used, answer, prove, explain. So it'll require a little bit more thinking, it'll require a little bit more legwork, but your result is going to be a lot better. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. For you guys at home, if you want to follow along with me, or if your parents want to follow along with me, go ahead, just get out a sheet of paper. This is actually a sheet of paper that's taped to my kitchen wall, so you guys can see I have not decorated my kitchen. Oh, well, I've just moved, so I get to cut myself a little bit of slack. We're going to just go ahead and we're just going to draw a big, giant box over most of the paper. So let's just pretend this is one big sheet of paper. So here's my box. I'm going to do mine in red, because I think it stands out, and also because I don't have a black marker. Okay, so there's our box. Now I want to go ahead and divide it up. Now when you're dividing it up, you want to start thinking of like a flag. Okay, we're going to divide a big section right here. And then we're just going to go ahead, I hope this does not stain my kitchen wall. And we're going to divide a line right down there. So this is going to be like a Texas flag. Okay? Which is appropriate for start, so that works out. Then we just want to take this section right here, and we're going to divide that again into two different sections. So just like that. Now, let's go ahead, and before we do anything else, I want to label these sections with what's going to go in each one. So that way we have a clear idea of what we're looking for. Okay, this first section takes the most room, and that's because it's probably the most important. If you don't have this, the rest of your essay falls apart. You can have this and you can have this, but if you don't have this, you're not even going to score a 1. Remember, the gradient score on here is from a 0 to a 3. 3 is great, it's exemplary, it has everything you need. 2 is good, 2 is passing, and then a 1 is going to be where you have an incomplete answer, you're missing something, but it makes sense. A 0 would be your answer just doesn't make sense. So let's go ahead and we'll just label this. This is the most important part though. This is going to be our thesis. Okay. For a thesis, all you're really doing is you're answering the question fully. I'm going to add fully in there because sometimes you can think you're answering the whole question, but you might not have looked at it closely enough. Be very careful when it comes to that. We're going to talk about that, how to make sure that you do that. Okay, our next part, which we're going to add kind of on, is going to be our text evidence. I'm going to put just in parentheses here have quotes here. You can see we have 2 boxes because I'm going to require 2 of them. If you can only find one piece of text evidence to support your answer, it's probably not the right answer. And every single star selection that we've seen, if they have an answer that they want you to put that they would count as right, as correct, there'll at least be 2 that you can find to back it up. Okay, if you can't find them, you know to go back and revise your thesis because your answer is probably not correct. Okay, our very last section that we're going to have, just right over here, is going to be our explanation. This is just where we kind of fully explain what exactly is going on. Okay, we're going to tell us, how does this connect with that answer? What about this shows that this is, true? Basically, all you're doing is explaining what's going on in that quote to me. You have to act like this person has never seen your selection before. They don't know what you're talking about. And you explain it. You tell me some background. You tell me how it relates. How does this show that? Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to kind of practice with this so you guys can see how it works. And so your parents can see how it works too. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you. This is from an actual STAR test. So this is the prompt for it. So in this STAR test, they gave you a drama sample from Anne of Green Gables, which if you've ever read it, Anne of Green Gables is a pretty good book. Okay, so it says, in this excerpt from Anne of Green Gables, I cannot read backwards, so I'm going to flip it around. Do you think the stage directions enhance your understanding of the scene? Okay, I'm going to move this back. Okay, so for Anne of Green Gables, just to give you guys some background, the part in the play that they're showing is when Anne, who's an orphan, shows up at the train station, and the man who's waiting for her, she thinks she's getting a new home, actually had asked for a boy to be sent. But in the end, everything works out for Anne. But you can tell through there, she's a little nervous, she's very imaginative, she's a little talkative, which I can relate to because I know when I get nervous, I start to talk a little bit too much. And so that's what the selection's about, just to give you guys a heads up so you know what we're going along with. What I want you guys to do is, first off, before you do anything else, before you can begin to answer it, you need to take a very close look at this. Now, I want you to go ahead and read it and think about what 2 questions is this asking. You can go ahead, pause the video, write those down on your sheet of paper. Okay, I'm going to take a little time and hopefully you've unpaused the video. Okay, I want you to take a look. I'm going to go ahead and this is what I would do, is I would always annotate the prompt. So that means I'm just going to try and look at it a little closer. And what I would always do if I was doing this is I'm going to have you guys circle or underline or box in, whatever you need to do to make it stand out, what you think the 2 kind of questions, the 2 things that you have to know to answer this fully are. Okay? So looking at this, there are 2 things that you have to explain, that you have to kind of answer to get this right. First off, you have to tell me about the stage directions. You have to pick out stage directions. If you picked out dialogue on here, they wouldn't count it correct. They're testing you to see if you know what stage directions are. Okay. The other thing that they'll have on here is they want to see if you understand what this adds to the scene. So you have to explain to me. You can't just point out any random stage directions about Anne getting up or Anne walking to the carriage. That's not really going to tell us anything important that we don't need to know. It's going to ask you, is there something that's going on with Anne, how she's supposed to act, that maybe you wouldn't get from the dialogue? Is there something that we can tell from how they write out those actions that's going to help us understand what's going on there? And there is. So right off the bat, when I was looking at this, I went ahead and on my copy, I wrote up at the top, I'm looking for stage directions. I'm going to ask, and then I need to know how they understand the scene. So that way, as I read the selection, I highlighted specifically things that were stage directions only. And only stage directions that would help me understand what was going on with Anne. Okay, so I actually, you need 2 quotes right here. I found 3. So here are the 3 I found. So one tells us that Anne clutches her bag. She's terrified. Matthew doesn't answer. Matthew is the man who's coming to pick her up. Anne's voice trembles. And here, this is Anne, and before she speaks, she has this moment of fear. Okay, so those stage directions all tell us that. Okay. From these, just looking at those stage directions that I pulled out, I think that these directions help us understand that Anne is really scared of not being accepted by her new family. She's an orphan, she's never really known any other life, so she's really frightened. And you don't necessarily get that from when she's speaking, because she speaks very confidently. So without those stage directions, we wouldn't understand that. So right now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put that for my answer. Okay, that's my answer. So whenever I'm writing my thesis, I'm just going to kind of look at the prompt. And I'm going to kind of reword it a little bit. I'm using the wording here. So I can sound professional. I want to sound like I am using academic language. Okay. So in this excerpt from Anne of Green Gables, do you think the stage directions enhance your understanding of the scene? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this part about the excerpt from Green Gables. So in the excerpt from Anne of Green Gables, and I'm going to go ahead and underline that because it's a title. I'm going to say Anne's stage directions, because all of the stage directions I was looking at were Anne's. Okay, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. So Anne's stage directions help us to understand how scared of not finding a new home she is. Okay. Now I could stop there, but here's the thing. I always want to include a by or because in there. One of the reasons why I ask you guys to do that is because it makes you elaborate on your answer. I could stop there and think, okay, well, I'm mark those 2 things off. I have about stage direction and how about understanding. But how did they do that? Okay, how do those stage directions manage to do that? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put by, showing how nervous she really is. Okay, there's my pie. I'm going to go ahead and circle it. It's just a way to kind of get you to elaborate on your thoughts and take it to the next level. A lot of times people will meet the criteria and kind of check it off and then just move on without getting to the level of depth that you could get to. We are aiming for a 3 here. We don't want to just be at a 1, so we're aiming for a 3 and we're looking to kind of push our answer to be the best it can be. Okay, for our next one, for our text evidence, our quotes. This is pretty easy because I've already done the work. Now if you haven't done the work, if you haven't highlighted as you read, you have to go back and you have to do this, and you're just going to choose the things that pop out to you first. Don't do that. You want to make sure that you highlight as you go, so that way it's all kind of in one spot and you have a lot to choose from already. Okay. I like to do this whenever I'm doing this, do one and do the explanation at the same time. Okay. And kind of think about what your explanation would be before you sort of choose the quotes. Because here I have 3 to choose from. The chances are I'm going to be able to really explain 2 of these very well, and one I might not have as much to say about it. So if you have a lot to choose from, it gives you a little bit more leeway when it comes to getting to those explanations. This part right here is what gets you to a 3. Having a good explanation, being able to explain your ideas and expand upon them is what gets you those high scores. And I know for our school, for Victoria West, if everyone in our school had made 3s on their short answer questions, which is actually, if you follow this advice, pretty easy to do. About, I believe it's 40 to 50% of you guys would have passed STAR who didn't pass. It was just a little tiny bit that was holding you back. And especially on our writing test, that can make a huge difference. So you guys want to make sure you know what to do with these things. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to look. So I have one that says, Anne clutches her bag. She is terrified. Well, how could I explain that? Well, if she's clutching her bag and she's terrified, it shows that she's not going to be as calm and collected as she seems. She's, scared of not having things work out. Maybe she's scared of even letting her stuff go because she's been by herself and that's all she has in the world. So for that one, I kind of have a lot to say about that. So that one would be good to use. Okay. Then I have the other quote that says, Matthew doesn't answer. Anne's voice trembles. If her voice is trembling, that's going to show that she's really nervous and she's unsure as to whether she's going to fit in, or she's scared that Matthew's being quiet because maybe he doesn't like her. So that one too I would have a lot to say. Okay, then Anne has this moment of fear. Well, I guess that could show that she's scared of what's going to go on or what could happen. But I think that one's kind of self-explanatory. I think it says a moment of fear. There's not a lot to say about that. There's not a lot to explain about that. It's just she's scared, and you're kind of going to get that from the quote. So I think my best ones are actually my first two. So those are the ones I'm going to use. Think about this when you're doing it. If you kind of think and you plan ahead, you're going to know which ones that you can really explain. Kind of just do it in your head, just like I did. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to write those in here. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to use something that's called an embedded quote. I'm just going to use a very simple, very easy version. Because this is all becoming one paragraph, in the end, I'll rewrite it. This will come first, and this will second, third, fourth, and fifth, to form like at least a 5-sentence paragraph. What I want to do is I want to make it as smooth as possible. So instead of just sticking a quote in here, a naked quote, we're going to kind of dress it up. We're going to kind of tell us, this is a quote. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, in the script, and then I'm just going to take this part right here. Clutches her bag, because she's terrified. Okay, so in the script, Anne clutches, I'm going to put quote marks around it because this is coming directly from there. Clutches her bag, she is terrified. Okay, and I end my quotes. Make sure that you put your quote marks around it. We need to know that this is not you, this is a quote. If you're using a quote, get credit from it, or for it, get credit for it. Put those quote marks there. So finally, in the script, Anne clutches her bag, she's terrified, and I'm going to explain that. So, right here, we're just going to go ahead, I'm going to put, okay, how would I explain this? By showing and holding onto the only thing she owns in the world. I'm going to check right here that I'm making sure I'm getting this. They help us to understand how scared she is not finding a new home. The stage directions show how scared Anne really is. Okay? So there, I can check mark that. Now I'm showing here that she's scared and she's nervous. Okay, so for our next little quote, we use that one about Matthew not answering and Anne's voice trembles. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and put the excerpt. I just want to change up my wording a little because I use script here, I use excerpt here. I want to kind of keep it interesting. The excerpt also tells us that when Matthew doesn't answer, Anne's voice trembles. Okay, so there we go. We have both of our quotes in there. Now we just need to make sure, I've shown here that she's really scared. Now I have to sort of point out, and so make sure I point out that she's scared that she's not going to find a new home. So, that one I talked about, Anne's voice trembling after Matthew doesn't answer her, shows us that she's scared that he might reject her. So I want to put that in there. I want to make sure that I get that, because it's not just that she's scared and she's nervous. She's not worried about going to a new school. She's worried that she's not going to find a home. And she wants one very badly. So, right here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, we can see that when Matthew, her new foster father, notice I'm kind of adding an explanation in, so I can tell what's going on. Okay, so we can see that when Matthew, the new foster father, doesn't answer her, Anne becomes worried that he might reject her. Okay, so there we go. That's all you do. Now, what we would do is we would take this part, we would put it in, we'd add this part, we'd add this, we'd add this, we'd add this. You have 5 sentences, you have a whole paragraph, and what that means is your whole box is full. A lot of time with APE or ACE, you would only have 3 sentences. And so one of the things as well that they'll judge you on is if you're really writing a good short answer, you should use up the whole box. And this will get you to that length. So what I'm going to want you guys to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you another one to practice on. Now for this, if you guys are practicing for your exam, this is going to be on the TEA website, and this will be for English 2. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a link to as well, hopefully at the bottom of this page, that will tell you, okay, where do you need to go to find this? And I want you to go ahead and if you're practicing for your exam, practice with this one, because this is going to give you an idea of how to use the box. Okay, so this one will be about a poem and a story. So how are the themes of Those Winter Sundays and All My Babies Are Gone Now similar? So what I'm asking you guys to do is go ahead, go there, and try it out and see how you do. This was one where, on here, when you're using 2 different ones, one will be from the first story, one will be from the second story, and they're going to show how they connect right there. Okay, give it a shot. That's all. If you guys have any questions, let me know. If you have any problems viewing this, let me know. If you can't view it on your iPad or your phone, let me know, so hopefully I can find a way to get that fixed. Okay, thank you. Bye, guys.